Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Rain was falling heavily on the rooftops of New Orleans that evening. In a small wooden house at the end of a narrow alley, Marcus Jefferson, a widower for 3 years, watched the drops slide down his window. Since his wife's death, silence had invaded his house like a cold mist. His days were filled with his work at the local bookstore and his memories, which he cherished with an almost painful melancholy. His children, having left for college, left the house empty, and his heart, despite its desire for company, refused to open again, until tonight. A faint noise at the front door caught his attention. At first, he thought it might be a stray cat or a neighbor caught in the rain. But when he opened the door, he found a young woman soaked to the skin, her hair plastered to her face and her eyes tired but filled with quiet determination. In her arms, she held 3 children, triplets, wrapped in blankets too thin for the season. The youngest, barely 6 months old, was sobbing softly, while the other 2, a 3-year-old boy and girl, looked exhausted and hungry. "Please," the young woman whispered in a weak but firm voice, "I have nowhere to go. My children are hungry." Marcus felt his heart clench. He wasn't a generous man by nature, he had learned to shield himself from the world's pain after losing his wife. But something in her eyes, something in this mother's vulnerability, awakened in him an instinct he thought he had lost, the instinct to protect and nurture. Without further thought, he ushered her in. He took off his soaked coats, turned on the heater, and quickly prepared some food. The triplets, initially wary, huddled close to him and their mother. Little did Marcus know that this chance encounter would change his life irreversibly. The young woman was not just a desperate mother, she carried within her a strength, a resilience, and a light that would revive his wounded heart and transform the silent house he inhabited into a vibrant home of life and love. That night, in the pouring rain, Marcus Jefferson had no idea he had just opened the door to a new life, a life that would, little by little, erase his years of solitude and show him that happiness could be reborn, even after the darkest of losses. The next morning, Marcus woke with a mixture of worry and curiosity. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained gray, as if the whole world was holding its breath. He went downstairs and found the young woman already up, preparing a meager breakfast for the triplets on the wooden kitchen table. Her name was Aaliyah Carter, and she had this look that mixed fatigue and determination, as if every day was a challenge she had to take on for her children. Marcus sat silently, watching her. The children, despite their age, seemed incredibly lively and attentive. The boy, Elijah, held tightly to his little plastic car, while the girls, Amaya and Ariel, played with an energy that contrasted with their apparent fragility. "You must be starving," Marcus said, serving plates. Aaliyah's voice trembled slightly, but she forced a smile. "Thank you, really. I don't know what I would do without your help." Marcus nodded silently. He felt that these words were more than just politeness, they came from the heart. After breakfast, as he cleared the table, he found himself speaking, as if the words could fill the emptiness he felt since his wife's death. "You know, it's not usual for me to do this, but, you and your children, you're welcome here, as long as you need us." Aaliyah looked at him, surprised. "Really? You're not asking me for anything in return?" "No," he replied, his eyes lowered. "No one should go hungry, especially not children." This simple act of generosity marked the beginning of a fragile but powerful bond. Marcus didn't know it yet, but this moment would lay the foundation for a new family. And as Aaliyah watched Marcus walk away to clean the kitchen, she felt a sense of hope she hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long time, she dared to believe that life could offer a second wind, and that maybe, just maybe, this widowed man could become more than just a savior, a true partner, a pillar for his children, and for her. The following days were far from easy. Marcus had opened his home to Aaliyah and the triplets, but managing 3 young children was no easy feat, especially for a man accustomed to silence and routine. Elijah, the 3-year-old, was curious and fearless, always trying everything. The twins, Amaya and Ariel, seemed glued to each other, but each with their own distinct personalities, Amaya, quiet and thoughtful, and Ariel, playful and mischievous. Aaliyah was doing her best to stay organized, but the accumulated fatigue was showing on her face. Marcus, meanwhile, was discovering the complex world of parenthood a little more each day. Making breakfast, changing diapers, dealing with crying spells and bickering, every seemingly simple task was becoming a real challenge. Yet, amidst this cacophony, something fragile but powerful was forming between them. Marcus was slowly letting go of his reserve. He laughed at the children's antics, learned their preferences, and sometimes, let Aaliyah breathe by taking over himself. Aaliyah, for her part, discovered in Marcus a patient and attentive man, capable of a gentleness she would never have imagined in a stranger. One afternoon, while they were all playing together in the living room, a situation gave rise to their first real moment of complicity. Ariel, the little mischievous one, had spilled a glass of water on the carpet. Before panic could set in, Marcus grabbed a rag and, with an amused smile, said, "Well, I think you just invented the living room fountain." Aaliyah burst out laughing, and even the children mimicked their laughter. The shared laughter was like a spark that broke the remaining ice between them. That night, as the children finally slept, Aaliyah sat next to Marcus in the kitchen and whispered, "Thank you for everything you do, for us." Marcus, touched, simply replied, I don't know why I'm doing this, maybe I don't want to be alone anymore." Their eyes met, and without knowing it, an invisible bond began to form. A fragile but profound trust that, despite the difficulties to come, would become the cement of this budding family. But life is never just about peaceful moments. Just when they thought they'd found a balance, an unexpected event would soon disrupt their daily lives and test their newfound bond. A week after Aaliyah and the triplets arrived, Marcus thought the house was finally settling into a fragile but pleasant routine. The children's laughter filled the living room, meals were shared with greater serenity, and a sense of warmth seemed to be reborn in every corner of the house. But this calm was abruptly interrupted one morning. As Marcus was preparing breakfast, an unusual sound came from the door, an insistent, heavy, urgent knock. He opened it to find a man in a dark suit, his expression authoritative and his face closed. "Marcus Jefferson?" the man asked dryly. "I'm a detective. We have questions about this young woman and her children." Marcus's heart sank. He had no idea who Aaliyah was, except that she seemed like a brave mother trying to survive with her children. Aaliyah came to the doorway, the triplets clinging to her legs. Her gaze, a mixture of anxiety and determination, met Marcus's. I can explain," she whispered. The detective pulled out a file and began asking questions. Marcus felt his anger and frustration rising. How could anyone doubt this woman who had done nothing but seek help? The children huddled around Aaliyah, scared. At that moment, Marcus made a decision that would seal their budding bond. He placed a protective hand on Aaliyah's shoulders and firmly declared, "As long as they're under my roof, no one will hurt them. Not you, not anyone." Aaliyah, moved by this gesture, felt her eyes fill with tears. She knew she could count on him, that his home had become a true refuge. The detective, though reluctant, understood that he could do nothing without solid proof and left, leaving behind a heavy but reassuring silence. This ordeal strengthened the bond between Marcus and Aaliyah. She realized that he wasn't just a kind man helping out of charity, but a partner willing to protect his family at all costs. Marcus, for his part, realized that he was ready to fully invest himself in the lives of this woman and these children, that he wanted more than ever to give meaning to his lonely existence. That day marked a turning point, the beginning of a solid mutual trust, the first real step toward what each would discover to be true love and a blended family. But the road to happiness was not yet mapped out, far greater challenges awaited them. The storm outside had calmed, but in Marcus's living room, another, quieter storm was brewing. After the incident with the detective, Aaliyah settled onto the couch, the triplets asleep beside her. Marcus, hesitant, took a seat opposite her. The silence weighed heavily, but this silence was different, it was charged with trust, with a mutual need to understand the other. "Marcus," Aaliyah began, her voice trembling, "I never told you about what brought me here, why I'm alone with them." Marcus nodded. He knew this moment would come. He himself had his scars, the sudden loss of his wife, the loneliness, the regrets accumulated over the years. But he wanted to be there for her, fully. "I want to know," he replied softly. "I want to understand, if you'll tell me." Aaliyah took a deep breath and began her story. She had lost her husband in a car accident a few years earlier, leaving behind debts she had to shoulder alone. The triplets had been born prematurely, requiring constant care, and she had had to juggle several odd jobs to survive. Fatigue, fear, and loneliness had been her constant companions. Marcus listened to her attentively, feeling a deep empathy for this woman he had only just met but who already seemed to occupy an enormous place in his heart. When she had finished, he spoke. "You are not alone now. You won't have to carry all this alone anymore." Aaliyah's eyes shone with unshed tears. For the first time in a long time, she felt she could rely on someone. Marcus, for his part, felt a mixture of admiration and protection. Life had given him a second chance, not only to love again, but to build something real and lasting. This conversation was the beginning of a deeper connection. The walls of their respective solitude began to fall, replaced by trust and affection. The triplets, even without understanding every word exchanged, felt this new warmth and seemed calmer, more confident. But the past was never completely behind them. Debts, old worries, and curious outsiders were there, ready to test their fragile happiness. Marcus and Aaliyah would face even greater challenges together, and each of them would discover the unsuspected strength that lay dormant within them. A few weeks after their first incident with the detective, Marcus thought life was slowly returning to a more peaceful routine. The triplets' laughter filled the house, and Aaliyah seemed to finally be finding a balance between her responsibilities and her well-being. Marcus, meanwhile, was discovering a happiness he hadn't felt since his wife's death. But one afternoon, when he had just come home from work, he found the house eerily quiet. The air seemed charged with a subtle tension. Aaliyah and the children were there, but their faces showed a mixture of fear and worry. "Marcus," Aaliyah said, her voice trembling, he's my old landlord. He found out where we are." Marcus felt his heart sink. He wasn't just a disgruntled man, this man had already threatened Aaliyah because of the debts she hadn't been able to repay, and he seemed determined to take back what he believed was hers, regardless of the children. Without hesitation, Marcus took Aaliyah and the triplets by the hand. "Don't worry. No one will hurt you here. Not while I'm here." They took refuge in the basement of the house, and Marcus began locking all the doors and windows. His thoughts swirled, he had to protect this family at all costs. Aaliyah, despite her fear, felt an eerie calm in his presence. Her determination to protect her children was strengthened by Marcus's quiet strength. When the owner finally entered, Marcus confronted him firmly. "You don't touch anyone here. Not them, not this house. If you want trouble, you'll get it from me." The man, surprised by Marcus's determination and strength, backed away and eventually left, vowing he would return. Once the threat had passed, Marcus sat down with Aaliyah and the children, hugging them all. "Thank you," Aaliyah whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "You're amazing. I don't know what we'd do without you." Marcus gently stroked his children's hair. "You'll never have to worry again. We're a family now, and a family always protects its members." This confrontation strengthened their bond and cemented their respective roles. Marcus was no longer just an ally, but a true pillar. Aaliyah, for her part, understood that she could finally trust someone to share the weight of her responsibilities and her fears. However, life still had more challenges in store for them. Their budding happiness would soon be tested by difficult choices and unexpected revelations. A few days after the confrontation with the former owner, the house finally seemed to return to normal. The triplets' laughter echoed through the halls again, and Marcus and Aaliyah savored the moments of normalcy they thought were almost impossible to regain. Yet the past hadn't said its last word. One afternoon, while Aaliyah was filing papers in Marcus's office, she came across an envelope with his name on it. Curious, she opened it and discovered a letter that made her heart race. It was from the bank, but the signature and tone seemed strangely familiar. The words revealed that Marcus had been forced to sell part of his bookstore a few years earlier to cover some personal debts he'd never wanted to mention to anyone. Aaliyah felt a strange unease rise within her. Marcus, who had always seemed so solid and sure of himself, also had his own scars and secrets. When he entered the office and saw the letter in Aaliyah's handwriting, he immediately knew she had discovered something he had long hidden. I wanted to tell you. Marcus began, but Aaliyah cut him off gently. It's okay, Marcus. I just want to understand. You shouldn't carry these weights alone. Marcus took a deep breath and told his whole story. The partial bankruptcy of his bookstore, the debts he'd accumulated after losing his wife, the nights spent battling despair. Every word revealed a vulnerability he'd never shown anyone. Aaliyah listened intently, tears in her eyes, understanding that Marcus's pain wasn't so different from her own. This confession, far from distancing them, brought them even closer. They realized that each of them carried an invisible burden, and that their meeting was no accident. It had allowed two wounded hearts to support each other. The triplets, innocent witnesses to this moment, seemed to sense this newfound complicity. Elijah approached Marcus and handed him a small toy, saying, "To protect us, Dad?" Marcus smiled and hugged his son. "Yes, big boy. Always." That day was a turning point. Marcus and Aaliyah understood that true connection lies not only in physical protection, but in trust, understanding, and sharing the hurts of the past. And as they held hands in the living room, they knew that no hardship could tear them apart if they remained united. But life, as always, still had unexpected challenges in store for them, events that would test not only their courage, but also the strength of their budding family. Marcus and Aaliyah's home finally seemed to breathe calm and security. The triplets were growing fast, and each laugh, each daily progress, made Marcus and Aaliyah more confident in their roles as parents and partners. Yet the unforgiving outside world hadn't said its last word. One morning, as Aaliyah was preparing breakfast, the sound of a powerful engine echoed from the driveway. A black SUV abruptly stopped in front of the house, and a man in a smart suit got out, accompanied by two guards. Marcus immediately sensed something was wrong. "Marcus Jefferson?" the man asked coldly. "I'm a representative of a real estate agency. This house was sold to you in a questionable manner." Aaliyah felt her heart race. She knew this kind of threat all too well. She stepped forward slowly, protectively, and placed an arm in front of the triplets. "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, his tone calm but firm. The man pulled out a file detailing that the house belonged to a contested estate and that, technically, Marcus didn't yet have full legal rights. Although no immediate legal action was planned, the shadow of eviction loomed over them. Marcus's blood boiled. He had opened his home to Aaliyah and the children to protect them, and now a simple legal formality threatened to destroy everything. But instead of giving in to fear, he made a decision, to protect his family at all costs. He contacted his lawyer, explained the situation, and asked Aaliyah to remain calm and not let the children sense any concern. Together, they devised a plan to secure the home and contest any possible actions. During these tense days, Marcus and Aaliyah discovered the strength of their bond. Every night, after the triplets were asleep, they confided in each other about their fears and hopes. They held hands and reminded each other that they were stronger together. "No matter what they try to take from us," Marcus whispered one night, "no one can ever take away what we've built here. Not you, not the children, not the love we share." Aaliyah smiled, tears in her eyes. "Yes, together we can face anything." This ordeal, although stressful, cemented their unity and made them realize that their family was not just made of walls and a roof, but of trust, courage, and unwavering love. But even as Marcus and Aaliyah began to believe in their shared strength, life still had one last challenge in store, something that could upend their budding happiness. As the weeks passed, Marcus and Aaliyah's home gradually settled back into a routine, despite the tensions surrounding the housing crisis. The triplets' laughter once again filled the rooms, and Marcus and Aaliyah began to experience true family harmony. One evening, while they were all having dinner together, Amaya, the quiet and thoughtful little girl, suddenly seemed worried. Mom. Dad, she whispered, I'm afraid you're going to leave. The other children began to cry softly, seeming to feel a worry they couldn't verbalize. Aaliyah felt her heart clench. No, my loves, she said, her voice shaky but firm. We're here forever. Marcus took Aaliyah's hand and gave her a reassuring smile, trying to convey his strength to the children. But this sense of security was soon tested. An unexpected letter arrived, revealing that the legal process for the house was moving forward faster than expected. The fear of being separated from the triplets and their home hung over them like a shadow. This situation caused tension between Marcus and Aaliyah. He wanted to fight legally to the bitter end, while she feared the consequences for the children. After an emotional exchange, they realized they had to stay united. Their love and their family were worth far more than any fear. The next day, Marcus went to court with their lawyer, while Aaliyah stayed home to care for the triplets. The stress was palpable, but Marcus showed no hesitation. He thought about every laugh, every hug, every moment spent with this family that was now his world. When the judge finally announced that Marcus was right and that the house was legally his, an immense relief filled his heart. But even more than that, it was the strength of their unity that emerged from this ordeal. They had overcome fear and uncertainty together. Back home, Aaliyah and Marcus shared a long hug, and the triplets, realizing that everything was okay, threw themselves into their arms. That night, they realized that true home wasn't just in the house itself, but in the love, trust, and protection they offered each other. This victory was sweet, but life still had surprises in store for them. Some would be challenges, others unexpected gifts that would transform their lives forever. After weeks of tension and struggles to secure their home, Marcus and Aaliyah finally began to taste peace. The triplets were growing up fast, their laughter filling the house with a warmth that slowly erased the scars of the past. Marcus and Aaliyah, meanwhile, were discovering the simple joy of being a real family. One morning, while Marcus was preparing breakfast, an unexpected event occurred, an invitation to appear on a local show about courageous and supportive families. The producer, having heard their story from a neighbor who was impressed by their courage, wanted to share their journey with the entire town. Aaliyah hesitated at first. She'd never liked putting herself out there, especially not with her children. But Marcus took her hand and said, "We've been through so much together, why not show the world that family, courage, and love can overcome anything?" The show was a success. The journalist was touched by Aaliyah and Marcus's story, their dedication to the triplets, and how they overcame obstacles. The children, innocent and joyful, stole the show with their spontaneous laughter and hugs. This turning point allowed Marcus and Aaliyah to receive unexpected help. Friends in the community offered them resources to improve their home, toys for the children, and even advice on how to better manage family life. The family finally felt supported and accepted by the outside world. This moment further strengthened their bond. Marcus and Aaliyah realized that their love and unity were not just for themselves, but also to show their children that adversity could be overcome with courage and solidarity. This chapter in their lives marked the beginning of a new era, a brighter life filled with laughter, love, and trust. The triplets grew up surrounded by security and happiness, while Marcus and Aaliyah discovered the true meaning of family, resilience, and shared joy. But, like any great story, there remained one last step, a final revelation that would definitively change their existence and lead them to an even deeper happiness. The sun rose gently over Marcus and Aaliyah's house, illuminating the laughter and loud voices of the triplets playing in the backyard. For the first time in years, the house echoed with pure happiness, without fear, without threat, without the shadow of the past. That morning, Marcus stood in the living room, watching Aaliyah help the children put on their coats for school. He felt a deep warmth fill his heart. This woman, this family, were now the reason for every smile and every heartbeat. Aaliyah, feeling his gaze, smiled at him. "You know, I never imagined my life would turn out like this," she whispered. Marcus approached, gently took her hand, and said, "Nor me. But look at us, we've turned our hurts into strength, our loneliness into family. We've found the love and happiness we thought lost forever." The children, hearing these words, ran up and huddled against them, laughing and screaming with joy. Elijah, Amaya, and Ariel, with their small hands clutching Marcus and Aaliyah, seemed to represent the embodiment of everything this family had been through: hope, resilience, and light after darkness. A few hours later, Marcus and Aaliyah held a small backyard party to celebrate their new beginning. Neighbors, friends, and a few people who had supported them came to share the moment. The atmosphere was filled with laughter, music, and warmth. The house was no longer just a roof, it was a home, a place where every wounded heart could find refuge. At the end of the day, as the children slept peacefully, Marcus and Aaliyah found themselves alone in the living room, hand in hand. The road had been long, strewn with trials, fears, and secrets revealed. But each obstacle had brought them closer together and forged a stronger, more united family. "We did all this together," Aaliyah whispered. "Yes, together, forever," Marcus replied, his eyes shining with tenderness. And so, in this light-filled house, their lives finally took on true meaning. A life filled with love, laughter, protection, and family, where each member could grow, dream, and be loved for who they were. The rain, the threats, the secrets, and the fears were now a thing of the past. Marcus, Aaliyah, and their triplets had found something far more precious: the certainty that, as long as they were together, nothing and no one could shatter their happiness.